Okay, this is going to be another community questionnaire response. This is to a video that was originally posted by Horror of Mike, and he was asking if you were stranded on a desert island, what items would you take with you, and specifically in 5 different categories. So I'll just go down this list and I'll talk about what my choices are. So the first one is, what book would you take? And it took a bit of consideration because I have several things, and in fact I'll kind of show you some of the runner-ups. But ultimately, I decided that I think I would take the complete and unabridged H.P. Lovecraft. As you can see, quite a sizable book there, and it is all of Lovecraft's short stories. And not including his poetry and that sort of thing, but it's basically all of his mythos and non-mythos stories collected in one volume, and so it's quite a hefty amount of reading there. And so I've always been a Lovecraft fan. So whether or not that's the sanest choice for reading material to take with you alone on a desert island, it's questionable, but I'm sure that I would get quite a lot of enjoyment out of it. But of course, I have to kind of give some honorable mentions to things that I had to weigh heavily whether or not I wanted to take. And of course, one of those has to be the inaccurately named Hitchhiker's Trilogy. And this particular collected edition collects all 6 books. A wonderful read, and probably a little bit better company on a desert island than Lovecraft's work would be, but there you go. Also, Volume 1 of 1001 Arabian Nights. My brightness is like ridiculous right now. I don't know what's happening with my camera. You can't even read this book, but trust me, this is Volume 1 of 1001 Arabian Nights. Again, quite a hefty read. And very enjoyable stories in here. So this was one that almost kind of made my list. And then, of course, as several others have mentioned, I can't go without bringing up The Lord of the Rings, the collected edition with all 3 stories. I wish that this edition contained The Hobbit as well, because honestly, The Hobbit is my favorite of the Middle-earth stories. But just in terms of the sheer amount of reading material there and the quality of reading material, as much as I would like to take The Hobbit, just my novelization of The Hobbit, I think I would get a bit more mileage out of the Lord of the Rings collected set, so that's why I put that one on there. What film would you take? And I'm assuming that this means that you have some means of actually, watching the film. And in this case, I would have to say Return of the Jedi, the original theatrical version of Return of the Jedi. And some of you might be asking, because people know that I'm a Star Wars fan, but I mentioned that Empire Strikes Back was I listed as #1 favorite film of all time, and my favorite Star Wars film. So why would I take Return of the Jedi on a desert island rather than Empire Strikes Back? And I think that's because it's kind of the culmination. It's the pinnacle of the classic trilogy. It's the conclusion, and it all wraps itself up into a incredibly fantastic and gripping finale with the attack on the Death Star, with the final confrontation between Luke and Vader and the Emperor. And I think that's why it speaks to me. It's that poignant, dramatic kind of clash, that final, that final kind of rise to the conclusion of that story. And so, if I had to keep only one Star Wars film, as hard of a decision as that would be, it would probably have to be Return of the Jedi. As much as I love Empire Strikes Back, and as superior a general film as I think Empire is to Jedi, I love that finale, and I would have to be able to experience that finale. And so that's why I would choose that movie. What one record, album, or disc would you take? Again, assuming that you had some means to actually, play it, listen to it. And I don't have it here with me to show you, but it would probably be Queen's A Night at the Opera. Probably my favorite album of all time, which contains probably my favorite song of all time, which is, of course, Bohemian Rhapsody. And it's just a fantastic album. There's a level of artistry that goes on in that album that is basically unmatched, in my opinion. And Queen, anybody who knows any amount about Queen as a group, as a band, as their kind of view into music, they were perfectionists in a almost completely literal sense, in the best sense of the word. I mean, they did not settle for second-rate music. They absolutely sought to push the envelope with every song that they made, and every studio recording that they made had to absolutely meet the highest level of quality. And that album, A Night at the Opera, I think is one of the most poignant albums that Queen ever made, but also one of the most poignant albums of sort of rock and roll during that period, during their coming into the music scene, through the 70s and 80s. And so yeah, absolutely fantastic, and it's an album that I don't think I could live without. What television series box set would you take? This one was a little tricky, because I was tempted to go with some of my favorite other favorite television programs, such as Firefly, which Samwise7 actually said he would take the Firefly box set, and that's not far off the mark from me. I also considered Babylon 5. The only challenge with Babylon 5 is if we're talking about only a single box set, then that means I could only take a single season of the show with me, because as far as I know, there's not like a fully collected version of the entire series on in one box. I could be wrong about that, but ultimately, and I think unquestioningly, it would have to be Carl Sagan's Cosmos, a breathtaking television series, a groundbreaking television series, and one that has left upon me anyway a more profound effect, a more universally influential effect on my life in general, and just the way that I need to challenge my perceptions of the world, but also to discover the beauty in simple things. I don't think that there's any other television program that makes you feel both entirely microscopic and insignificant, while at the same time demonstrating how you are the universe, and the universe is you. One of Carl Sagan's most famous quotes: "We are star stuff. We were born of the stars, and thus we are the stars." And the other element, one of his other major messages being that in order to understand where we're going, we have to understand where we came from. And just a beautiful series. If you have not seen it, and it's kind of expensive, as I recall, I think the DVD box set usually rests somewhere around $80 to $100, because it was a pretty long-standing series. I mean, it was 22 episodes, I believe, 24 episodes, something like that. And so it's quite an in-depth, lengthy series that just spans the entirety of the cosmos, of history, of science, and but it's absolutely worth watching. Anyone who has any interest at all in the kind of basic building blocks, understanding kind of the basic building blocks of who we are and where we come from, where the earth comes from, where our sun comes from, and indeed where the universe comes from and where it's going, should watch that series. It's brilliant. It's brilliant stuff. And then finally, what luxury item would you take? Well, considering that considering my wife, a luxury item is probably would get me into trouble, and is also probably not appropriate. But also figuring that, saying like a satellite phone or something that could get me off of the desert island would be considered cheating. I don't know. It would probably have to be. I'm thinking that it would have to be basically a limitless supply of paper, pencils, and erasers. And just because I would want the opportunity to do, I mean, basically, if you think about it, you'd have all this time outside of whatever you'd need to be doing to survive. But basically, you'd have all this free time, and I think more than anything, what I would pursue in that free time would be continuing kind of the story craftsmanship, the continuing to kind of put ideas to paper, writing stories and putting my ideas out there so that I can get them out of my head and I can get them out into the world. And it would be kind of interesting to see something like that, to see someone walk away from like a 10-year stint alone on a desert island with nothing but pencils and paper, and to see what they come back to the world with, like what have they done with that pent-up creativity during that whole time. So yeah, that's my answers. Pick them over, let me know what you think, and thanks, Mike, for putting that question out there. It's pretty interesting. It's brought some ideas to light about who I am, and it's always fun to pretend in that kind of situation.